Thanks for clicking and welcome into the Hyundai Studios here on STOHD.com for STO Fantasy Playbook. I'm Will Ewick, joined alongside Ryan Cavanaugh. Today we have Stardom Situm, the injury impact for the Thursday night game, and also the fantasy marketplace. A reminder that Stardom Situm, we're looking for those guys on the fringe, also some big names that maybe you should sit, also some no names maybe you should start. Kind of made a big name for himself, but you think there's reason people may have him on your bench. You want him to get RG3 in their lineup.
Yeah, well, I'm going under the assumption that when draft came around, they had other quarterbacks on their team, and they drafted RG3 as a backup. It's time. He's proved it for 2 weeks. He's got a very favorable matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, the 29th ranked pass defense in the league. And last week they made the Cleveland Browns look like the New England Patriots throwing the football. RG3 is going to have a field day. Malcolm Floyd from the Chargers is another guy I look to have a big week. 6 catches, 8 targets last week, and he's been Phillip Rivers' go-to guy. I anticipate the Falcons and the Chargers, with their confusion in their offensive backfields, to throw the football all over the place, and for Malcolm Floyd to have another big week, regardless of whether Antonio Gates is back or not.
And obviously Meacham not really working out in San Diego as everyone thought, at least in the early going, so Floyd should benefit from that. A couple starts for me. One of them, Donald Brown, Indianapolis Colts running back. Really hasn't lit the world on fire with his stats so far, just in the mid-40s, both week 1 and week 2, but in week 1, he got the score, and it was also on 9 carries. So now they're not going to be playing catch-up as I think they were the first couple of weeks with a matchup against Jacksonville, the second to last rated run defense. I look for him to have a breakout game. My other one, Brent Selleck, tight end. You look at him, he's averaging 6 receptions and 111 yards early on in the season. You have Macklin banged up with a hip injury, Riley Cooper with a bruised collarbone, Deshaun Jackson, hamstring spasm, Avant with a wrist bruise. He's really the only healthy guy right now in Philadelphia that Vic can throw to, so I expect him to have a big week. Now we move on to our sits, Ryan, and really 4 big-name guys that we're looking to sit. One of them for you, a top 5 running back as he was drafted by.
Right, Chris Johnson from the Titans. And if he wasn't the highest paid running back and a top 3 round draft pick in fantasy leagues, this wouldn't even be a question. You would sit Chris Johnson. This year, only 21 rushing yards. He averages 1.1 yard a carry, and the receiving numbers aren't even helping him out. Only 58 yards receiving. Titans coach Mike Munchak says he's not ready to sit Chris Johnson yet. I'm telling you, fantasy owners, you should be ready to sit Chris Johnson. Another guy, Sean Green. He had a concussion last week. He was cleared and came back to the game. Concussion aside, it doesn't matter, Will. They're playing against the Miami defense. They're the 4th against the run so far this year. Keep them on your bench.
I got a couple sits for you, Ryan, and I hope this tree is steady because I'm going out on a limb. These guys were taken in the 1st and 2nd round. My first one, Michael Turner. Turner's just looked slow if you've watched him. He's only averaging 2.6 yards per carry. And to top things off, he had a DUI on Tuesday, so that kind of complicates things. Is he in the coach's doghouse? And now he's going against the #1 rush defense in the San Diego Chargers. He's kind of a touchdown guy. If he doesn't get that touchdown, he's really not going to give you any production at all. Larry Fitzgerald, my other one. I mean, you look at him, 5 receptions for 67 yards. On the season, that's not one game. Kevin Cobb, his rapport with him just hasn't been there. Now they're going against the #4 pass defense in Philadelphia. He's probably going to have Asamoah matched up against him all game long. I know he was drafted as the 2nd receiver probably overall in the draft, but I put him on my pine, Ryan. We look now to the injury impact for the Thursday night game. We have the New York Giants going against the Carolina Panthers. New York Giants, kind of some backfield fluctuation with an injury to Mon Bradshaw. How do you see this playing out, Ryan?
Well, a lot of people would expect David Wilson from Virginia Tech, the rookie and the heir apparent to Bradshaw's running back throne, to be the guy to carry the load if Bradshaw can't go. Not the case. A fumble in week 1 put him in Tom Coughlin's vaunted doghouse, and if you know anything about that, Coughlin doesn't visit that doghouse very often. Expect Wilson to stay there, and Andre Brown, somewhat of a journeyman, has kind of assumed the role, and he's going to get the bulk of the carries if Bradshaw can't go.
Now we move on to our fantasy marketplace, guys that you can buy low and sell high. Also maybe some people that are not on the radar right now that should be on your radar. One of those guys is because he hasn't played yet, Mikel LeSure.
Sure, the Detroit Lions running back Mikel LeSure is coming off a suspension, and week 3 will be the first time he plays. And if you watched us last week, you'd know that Will told you to sit Kevin Smith, the Lions running back. Will was right. Kevin Smith, 53 yards rushing, 0 scores. Apparently the Lions front office wasn't very pleased with it either, which means the backfield and the starting job is all Mikel LeSure's to take. That's a guy you're going to want to keep your eye on. Another running back, Steven Jackson, I got his stock going down, Will, and the reason for that is the groin injury last week. With Daryl Richardson, the young gun, coming in and playing very well, 83 yards rushing, even when Jackson's healthy, I think they're going to give Richardson more carries to see just how good this kid could be.
Somebody that hasn't played yet this year that's not really on the radar, Jerome Simpson was a pretty decent wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals last season. 50 receptions for 725 yards. Now he's with the Minnesota Vikings. Really only Percy Harvin ahead of him there. He had a good rapport with Christian Ponder in the preseason. He's on a 3-game suspension. I get him now, put him on my bench for when he comes back. Stock going down, D'Angelo Williams. And this is just a crowded backfield with Tolbert, Stewart, Cam Newton thinks of himself as a running back, and also it's a passing team. Going back to last season, his last 4 games, he's averaging only 9 touches. That's receptions and carries per game. I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him, and you probably won't either. That's all the time we have for the STO Fantasy Playbook. Here, I want to remind you to check out our columns on week and check back each week for advice on stardom and sit 'em. For Ryan Kavanaugh, I'm Will Ewick, reminding you this is your fantasy. We just happen to be in it.